Shalom everyone, and welcome to our study of Parashat Pinchas. What I would like to do today is to really study Parashat Pinchas from the women perspective. And what do I mean by that? The Torah describes one of the most famous claims of 5 women, the daughters of Tzelofchad. ותקרבנה בנות צלופחד בן חפר בן גלעד בן מחיר בן מנשה למשפחות מנשה בן יוסף. So there are 5 daughters to Tzelofchad who passed away, and he was from the tribe of Yosef. He was the son of Menashe, the son of Yosef. And they came close to Moshe and to the Beit, to the Jewish court, and they asked for something. And we'll talk about what they asked in a minute. ואלה שמות בנותיו, and these are the names of the daughters, מחלה, נועה, חוגלה, מילכה ותרצה. By the mere fact that the names are mentioned, the 5 names are mentioned, that the Torah does not just say there were 5 daughters to Tzelofchad and they came and they asked for something, but the Torah specified the names of each one of them. The Torah says bnotav, his daughters, and specify the names of each daughter. It seems to be that the Torah tries to send a message. The daughters of Tzelofchad came to Moshe and to Elazar, Aaron's son, who was the high priest, and to the congregation of Israel, and asking for what? They asked for inheritance in the land of Israel. Their father died. There are no sons. They are the only heirs of Tzelofchad, and they ask that they will receive an inheritance like any other member of the nation of Israel. So they ask for land. They ask for a territory, for inheritance in the land of Israel. In Bamidbar, Rabbi, it's a midrash, says the following. And we need to read this midrash very carefully, because it does not only praise women, but it also shows some of the incredible characteristics that the Jewish women had and have. So the midrash says the following. ותקרבנה בנות צלופחד, and the daughters of Tzelofchad came closer, which means they approached Moshe and Elazar and the Jewish court, asking for the inheritance of the land of Israel. Says the Midrash, אותו הדור, this generation, היו אנשים גודרות מה שאנשים פורצים. This is an amazing sentence. Whatever the men will try to ruin or to destroy, or they did something that really caused damage, the women will fix. In the language of the Midrash is that every time that the men will try to break the fence, the women will fence it again, will basically fix the fence. And the Midrash is going to give us few examples. שכן אתה מוצא שאמר להם אהרון פרקו נזמי הזהב אשר באוזני נשיכם ולא רצו אנשים ומיחו בבעליהן. שנאמר ויתפרקו כל העם את נזמי הזהב והאנשים לא נשתתפו עמהן במעשה העגל. So if you go back in our memory to the story of the golden calf of Egel HaZahav, when the men wanted to get the jewelry and the gold earrings, the women refused. The women told their husbands, do not take my gold earrings. And it's not because they are gold earrings and they are jewelry, because I do not want to participate in a golden calf. I'm not going to participate in an action that goes exactly against God's will. We just heard on Mount Sinai that God says you shall not do any idol, any picture, any frame. So why would you do that? The husbands obviously did not listen. And what did they do? ויתפרקו כל העם את נזמי הזהב אשר באוזניהם. The men gave their own earrings and gold and silver and rings for the golden calf. So, the first time that the women stood up against their husbands, in order to fulfill God's commandment was in Chet HaEgel. The second one, וכן במרגלים, שהוציאו דיבה וישובו וילינו עליו את כל העדה, ועליהם נגזרה גזרה שאמרו לו נוכל לעלות, אבל אנשים לא היו עמהם בעצה. שכתוב למעלה הפרשה, כי אמר השם להם מות ימותו במדבר, ולא נותר מהם איש, כי אם כלב בן יפונה, איש ולא אישה. This is an amazing midrash. At the time of the Meraglim, the spies, that we talked about them in Parashat Shlach a few weeks ago, when the spies came back and they badmouthed the land of Israel, and they basically said, we will not be able to overcome the enemies and we will not be able to conquer the land of Israel. Caleb led the opposition and then Joshua joined him. It was only the men. The women, they believe that God can do whatever He wants and they will conquer the land of Israel. And therefore, when it says, lo notar me'em ish, that after 40 years in walking in the desert, no man from that generation was left, the Torah used the word ish, which means men. And the Midrash says men, but not women. Women were able to go into the land of Israel. So all that generation that left Egypt, that was annihilated in the desert, it's only the men. The women had faith that if God say, I'm going to bring you to the land of Israel, He will. And then, אבל אנשים קרבו לבקש נחלה בארץ. לכך נכתבה פרשה זו, סמוך למיתת דור המדבר, שמשם פרצו האנשים וגדרו האנשים. The Midrash says, this story about the daughters of Tzelofchad who approached Moshe to ask for an inheritance in the land of Israel, its proximity is to what? To the fact that the people that left Egypt and died in the desert as a result of the sin of the spies, so they died, but the women stayed. And how do I know that the women stayed? Because Machla, Noah, Chogla, Milka, and Tirza, the 5 daughters of Tzelofchad, they came to ask for an inheritance in the land of Israel. So, we have, according to this Midrash, we have 2 main, I would call it even cardinal sins, like very severe sins, that the men participated in, the golden calf and the spies, but the women did not want to have anything to do with it. And if I look at these 2 examples, I can see that the golden calf is obviously more of a, I will call it between man and God, about faith in God. Faith that if God told Moshe to go up to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, He'll come back. I don't need another golden calf. So that's in one area that the women had, in a way, more commitment to God. And when I look at the sin of the spies, you're talking about what? You're talking about faith in a promise that God gave to the forefathers that He will give them the land of Israel. It's faith in God's promise that He told Moshe that this is a land filled with milk and honey, and that He will conquer the land of Israel with the Jewish people, and it will be given to the Jewish people. And it's faith in Kalev, one person, who says, we will be able to do it. The women, they had faith. They had more faith than the men. And I will add one more example that the Midrash does not bring. There is another Midrash. At the time when the Jews were enslaved in Egypt, obviously we can imagine the despair, the sadness, the frustration, the darkness that everyone felt. Waking up in the morning as a slave, going to sleep as a slave, every time you are being told what to do. So, according to that Midrash, the men decided that, you know what? We should not be with our wives and we should not build families. Because for what? What purpose? To bring more children to a world of darkness and sadness and enslavement? But the women, they never lost hope. They knew that it can take as long as it will take, but God promised that they will be redeemed from Egypt. So what did they do? They got dressed nicely, and they convinced their husbands to build families and to have children. So the women were the ones that continued the Jewish people, that created Jewish continuity even in the most darkest time in Jewish history, the enslavement in Egypt. I will bring one more example with Miriam. Miriam had to convince her father Amram to go back to Yocheved, to his mom. And obviously, with that togetherness, Moshe was born. Moshe, the redeemer of the nation of Israel from Egypt, was born because his sister Miriam had faith that Jewish continuity must continue. And therefore, even and despite darkness and severe decrees against the Jewish people, we need to continue on. So we are talking about faith, we're talking about trust, we're talking about insight that the women had that the men were lacking. So now, let's see another example. That's a story about Korach. We spoke about Korach a few weeks ago. But if you remember, Korach was not alone. Korach had partners in crime. Korach, Datan, and Aviram. And then there was another person, On ben Pelet, On the son of Pelet. He was one of the main instigators. He's mentioned in the first verse. If you remember, ויקח קורח בן יצהר בן קהת בן לוי, ודתן ואבירם, ואון בן פלט בני ראובן. In the first sentence, the Torah described the four instigators, Korach, Datan, Aviram, and On ben Pelet. Now we know that Korach was punished, Datan and Aviram were punished, but we lost sight of On ben Pelet. No one talks about him. What exactly happened to him? So the Talmud in Sanhedrin, on page 109b, said something incredible. It says the following. Amar Rav, so Rav, who lived in the beginning of the 3rd century, first in Eretz Israel, and then he went down to Babylon, he says the following. On ben Pelet ishto hitzilato. You know why we don't hear anything about On ben Pelet, and he really did not die in the plague, and he was not punished? Because his wife saved him. His wife saved him? So take a look at the story. אמרה לה, מה נפקא לך מינה? אמא רע בען תלמידה, ואמא רע בען תלמידה. Basically, On ben Pelet, this On, the son of Pelet, he went to the meeting with Korach and Datan and Aviram against Moshe. And he was all tzehitzt, he was all excited. He is going to what? To go against Moshe, and he's going to go against Aaron, and he is going to what? To maybe build a name for himself. He comes home, and his wife, who we don't know her name, but she was very wise. And she says to him, my dear husband, no, how was the meeting? So he says, oh, I'm so excited. Korach is going to replace Moshe or Aaron, and this one, Datan and Aviram, are going to replace this one, and I'm also going to be the head of my tribe. So she looks at him, and now I'm obviously adding details. She gives him a nice dinner, and they have a nice glass of wine, and she tells him, dear husband, what are you talking about? You will go and fight Moshe and Aaron, that they are the true prophets of God? For what? Whatever position you're going to get, you will still not be the king of Israel. Even if you are the head of the tribe of Reuven, you are not going to be the leader of all the nation of Israel, like Korach or his other members of his group. You're not going to be the high priest. What is the benefit? It's meaningless. Why would you go against Moshe and Aaron? So he was thinking, אמר לה, מה יעבד? הבי בעצה וישתבע לי בעדיו. So On, the son of Pelet, says to his wife, my dear wife, I hear what you say, but there is nothing else I can do. I was there, I committed myself to this conspiracy against Moshe and Aaron, and I took an oath that I'm going to participate. So I can't back down, I can't, I need to be with them. I hear what you say. I understand it's going to lead me to destruction, or it's going to lead me to no good, because still I'm not the king, but I can't get out of it. אמרה לה, ידענה, דכולה כנישתא קדישתא נינו, דכתיב כי כל העדה כולם קדושים. אמרה לה, טוב, דאנה מצלינה לך. His wife told him, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Korach said that the entire congregation is very holy. Let me deal with Korach and his group. You will be fine. But I took an oath, I made a commitment. On, dear, you will be okay, says his wife. Ashkite chamra ve'arvite ve'aginte gavai. So what does she do? She gives him another glass of wine and another glass of wine, and he falls asleep. So On ben Pelet is asleep. Utva al bava ostarta lemazia. So what does she do? His wife. So she put On, her husband, in the tent. He is lying in bed. He is asleep. He is in deep sleep. The group, Korach and his group, are coming to pick him up. So, what does she do? She goes at the entrance of the tent, and she removes her sheitel, and she removes her hat, and she uncovers her hair. Called De'at Achazia, Adar. So everyone who wants to come to the tent, he sees his wife without her hair covering. So because they are so holy, so they go away. And they don't call On to join them. Hadehachi vehachi. So therefore they said, you know what, we are not going to call him. His wife is standing at the entrance of the tent without a hair cover. So we are not going to talk to her or to him. And therefore they went. And then they were punished, they were killed. And On, who woke up late in that morning, was saved from this entire punishment. Let's see what this Talmudic paragraph is trying to tell us. This is an amazing, with tremendous insight, a Talmudic paragraph with tremendous insight. First and foremost, the conversation. This Talmudic paragraph tried to convey that there was a conversation between On, the son of Pelet, and his wife, and he does listen to her. And she has an insight. On comes home and he's all excited and he's going to see a wonderful future. His wife says to him, my dear husband, what are you doing? She makes sense where On makes no sense. His wife does not even talk about the fact that Moshe was chosen by God, that Aaron was chosen by God. She doesn't even go there. She just says to her husband in a very simple way, what's the gain? What are you going to gain from it? Why would you put yourself in the middle of something so terrible? Why would you want to be part of such a fight when you benefit nothing? So first and foremost, you see her insight, her wisdom. She knew how to read, how to understand, to identify the core issue. And she says to him, it's meaningless for you. So that's one insight. Second insight. She takes care of things, but how? Take a look. she knows that the group is going to come to the tent to pick him up. And even if he would be asleep, they will take him. What does she do? And this is such a terrible commentary on Korach and his group. She removes her hair cover. So she stands by the tent with her hair not covered. Now, I'm not going to go into all the laws of covering the hair, but definitely, if a woman stands by the tent, by her tent, with her hair not covered, it's not a violation of a biblical commandment. That's in the entrance of her tent. But to go and to challenge Moshe and Aaron and basically accusing them of deviating from God's will and making up commandments, this is a biblical offense. So look at those tzaddikim, these righteous people. When they see a woman without her hair covered, they don't talk to her. But they have no problems to go and to accuse Moshe and Aaron for being false prophets. By accusing them to be arrogant, by accusing them to take all that position and power because they're just power hungry. That's okay, but to talk to a woman without her hair cover, that's not fine. That's what she realized. This woman is one of the wisest women that we met in the Talmud. She understands exactly what are they after. She understands that this entire Korach issue is not really for something good. It's not really fighting for truth and justice. This is all about agenda. This is all about self-glorification. It's all about my own positions. And she says, my husband will have nothing to do with it. And I will see it through that they will go away. I'll put them to the test. I'm going to uncover my hair and let's see. What would they do? What do? They run away to show how righteous they are. But they have no problems to run and to challenge and accuse Moshe in terrible accusations that are totally not true. There is a continuation to this midrash that I will just say by heart. The midrash says, Chochmat nashim banta beita. The wisdom of women can build a home. This is on the son of Pelet's wife. She was able to maintain her home. Ve'ivelet beyadea te'arsena. And a woman who is not chachama, who is not smart, can destroy the house. The women again, their insight, their common sense, their ability to see to the core and not to get excited with all that is going on. This is the sixth example, I think. We brought the two examples from the Midrash, the golden calf and the spies. I told you about the women in Egypt making sure the Jewish continuity goes on. Miriam and Moshe. And now this is the fifth one. The fifth one that we see that the women has tremendous understanding and insight into might be even complicated or perplexed issues, or when it comes to times of faith. And with that, I would like us to see the next source. The next source talks about the first Crusaders. The first Crusaders took place in Germany at 1096. And three major populated Jewish cities, Spira, Worms, and Magenza, were destroyed by the Crusaders. Rabbi Shlomo, the son of Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Natan, basically described some of the events that took place in 1096 in Germany. Some of it's a pretty gory description. So let's see what we can find there. ואותה שנה, that year, אירע פסח בחמישי בשבת. Pesach fell on Thursday. וחודש אייר יום שישי ושבת. And the month of Iyar, the Rosh Chodesh of Iyar, the first day of Iyar, of the Hebrew month of Iyar, was Friday and Saturday, Friday and Shabbat. ובשמונה באייר, and on the 8th of Iyar, ביום השבת, on Shabbat day, קמו האויבים על קהל שפיירה. The Crusaders came on the congregation of Spira in Germany. ויהרגו בהם 11 נפשות קדושות, אשר קידשו בוראם תחילה ביום שבת קודש, ולא אהבו להיצחן בצחנתם. So on that Shabbat, the 8th of Iyar, the Crusaders came and killed 11 holy souls from the Spira congregation because they refused to convert to Christianity. ושם הייתה אישה חשובה וחסידה. And in that community, there was a very important and pious woman. ושחטה עצמה על קידוש השם. She slaughtered herself on the sanctification of the name of God. What does that mean? It means that she didn't wait to be killed after she will refuse to convert to Christianity. She actively killed herself before the enemies came to force her for forced conversion. והיא הייתה הראשונה לשוחטים ונשחטים אשר בכל הקהילות, and she was the first one to be killed and to show the path for others not to convert to Christianity. והנשארים ניצלו על ידי ההגמון בלא צחן. So 11 Jews were killed, one woman killed herself and showed the path for others, but for now on, this is 8th of Iyar, 11 Jews are being killed, massacred, because they didn't want to convert to Christianity. One woman killed herself, and the rest of the Jews escaped to the governor of that city, and he protected them for now. ובכ"ג באייר, in the 23rd of Iyar, which means 15 days later, קמו על קהל ורמיזה. The Crusaders went to Worms, והקהל נחלק לשתי כיתות. מקצתן נשארו בבתיהם, ומקצתן ברחו אצל ההגמון. So the congregation split two. One part stayed at home, and the other part fled to the governor of the city to be protected in his castle. ויקומו זאבי ערבות על אותם שהיו בבתיהם וישדדום, אנשים ונשים טף נער וזקן, ויפלו המדרגות ויהרסו הבתים וישללו שלל ויבוזו בז, ויקחו את התורה וירמסו הביתית ויקראוה וישרפוה ויאכלו את בני ישראל בכל פה. So the people who stayed in their homes were massacred. The enemies came, looted all the spoil, killed the men and the women and the children, and they burned the Torah, they took the Torah, they stepped on it. So that group that stayed at home was annihilated. ויהי לשבעת הימים, so 7 days later, ביום ראש חודש בסיוון, on the first day of Sivan, which was 7 days after the 23rd of Iyar, יום ביאת ישראל לסיני לקבל את התורה, the day that in ancient times Jews stood by Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. הוחרדו אותם אשר נשארו עדיין בחצר ההגמון. So the Crusaders infiltrated the governor's castle, and they saw all the Jews that were trying to hide there. והתעוללו בהם האויבים כמו לראשונים ויתנום לחרב. They tortured them, and then they murdered them. והם נתחזקו במעשה אחיהם, ונהרגו וקידשו את השם לעין כל, ופשטו צווארם להתיז ראשם על שם יוצרם. So what did they do? The people in the governor's castle, the Jews there, they killed themselves on the sanctification of God's name. And basically, they followed the path of that woman from months ago that killed herself and didn't wait for their enemies to kill them. She, in a way, actively killed herself in order not to convert to Christianity. ומהם ששלחו יד בעצמם וקיימו אם על הבנים רוטשה ואב על בניו נפל, כי נשחטו עליהם ושחטו איש את אחיו ואיש את קרובו ואשתו ובניו, וגם חתנים ארוסותיהם ונשים רחמניות, את יחידיהן. Meaning they killed each other like Masada, in order not to what? In order not to fall into what? Into the hands of the Crusaders. וכולם בלב שלם קיבלו עליהם דין שמיים, and they accepted upon themselves this heavenly judgment. ובהשלמת נפשם לקונם היו צועקים שמע ישראל, השם אלוקינו, השם אחד. And they will cry out this famous statement of faith. Listen, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. והאויבים יפשיטום ויסחבו מסכו והשלך. The enemies basically took their clothes off them, and they slapped them and they grabbed them on the streets. ולא השאירו מהם זולתי מעט מזער, and only few Jews were left, אשר אנסו והטבילום בעל כוחם במי צחנתם, and they forced them to a forced conversion. וכנגד 800 היו מספר ההרוגים אשר נהרגו באלו שני ימים, וכולם ניתנו לקבורה ערומים. 800 Jews were massacred on that 2 days. והאויבים מיד כשנכנסו בתוך החצר מצאו שם קצת מן החסידים גמורים עם רבינו יצחק ברבי משה עוקר ערים. When the enemies infiltrated the city, they found one of the most sages and most scholarly sage. דריבם רבינו יצחק ברבי משה עוקר ערים, he was such a scholar, הוא פשט צווארו וחיתכו ראשו תחילה. He basically gave his neck and they slaughtered him on that minute. ונתעטפו בטליתות המצויצות וישבו להם בתוך החצר למהר לעשות רצון יוצרם. They wrapped themselves with the talit and they basically gave their lives for the sanctification of the name of God. And then their description goes on and on and on, and then he says, ושם חגרו נשים בעוז מותניהם, the women, again. When they saw that the enemies are coming and they kill everyone, and everyone else who they didn't kill, they force converting him to Christianity. Take a look what the women did. ושם חגרו נשים בעוז מותניהם. The women basically put on themselves such courage. וישחטו בניהן ובנותיהם וגם עצמם. This is a terrible description. The women killed their children so they will not be forced to convert to Christianity, and then they kill themselves. וגם אנשים רבים אימצו כוח וישחטו נשיהם ובניהם וטפם. And many men took basically the example of the women and they did the same. הרכה והענוגה שחטה ילד שעשועיה. This pleasant, gentle woman would kill her child so he will not be converted to Christianity. ויעמדו כולם איש ואישה וישחטו זה לזה. It's really almost like a description of Masada. ובתולות וכלות וחתנים הביטו בעד החילונים וצעקו בקול גדול. And brides and grooms, they looked through the windows, they saw the masses, the Crusaders coming in, they understood exactly what will happen to them, and they gave their lives. Now, I need to talk about two things here. One, you see that the testimony that Rabbi Shlomo and Rabbi Eliezer, who lived between 1090 to 1170, so they are talking about events that took place in their times. They basically report what they heard, basically saying that the leaders of the group who gave their lives in order not to convert to Christianity at the first Crusaders at 1096 were the women. The women were the leaders of faith to the entire congregation. That's one thing that we can learn from that testimony. But there is another detail which is problematic halachically. We know that one of the transgressions that we should give our lives and not to violate it is obviously that if someone comes to us and say you need to convert, you need to worship an idol, we need to tell him, look, we believe in one God, and if you want to kill me, but I'm not going to bow down to the idol. So then, if he kills you, he kills you. But you don't need actively to kill yourself. And here, we see two things. A, they didn't wait to get killed, they killed themselves. B, they killed their children before the Crusaders came, which is obviously a very surprising detail. I will not go through all the halachic discussions, but I will just mention that after that testimony, you see Rabbeinu Tam, for example, in the beginning of the 12th century, and later on other scholars in France and in Germany trying to understand and perhaps even to justify what they did halachically. And then later on in the 16th century, the Maharshal basically says that he thinks that what they did was overboard. They shouldn't have done it. But we're not going to judge what they did halachically. I just wanted to use this testimony from 1096, first Crusaders in Germany, and you see again the women. The women had tremendous faith and commitment and dedication to God, to faith, to religion, more than the men. Yet, this is the sixth example. So now let's see the last example. Tana. So that's the Babylonian Talmud in Gittin, Tractate Gittin, page 57b. This story describes the terrible ramifications and outcome of the Roman conqueror of the land of Israel, especially after the Bar Kokhba revolt. The Romans, with tremendous rage and wrath, murdered Jews and sold Jews as slaves. The numbers are tremendous. And the story is the following. Tana מעשה ב-400 ילדים וילדות שנשבו לקלון. So it's a story about 400 boys and girls that were captured by the Romans, and they were put in a boat. הרגישו בעצמן למה הם מתבקשים. So the girls understood immediately why they were put on that boat. They understood that they are going to be sexually abused by the Romans and by anyone else who is going to buy them. So they understood where is that boat taking them. אמרו, אם אנו טובעים בים, אנו באים לחיי העולם הבא. So the girls asked one of the boys who was somewhat of a scholar, they asked him, if we're going to jump into the ocean here, would we have the merit to go to the world to come? דרש להם הגדול שבהן אמר השם מבשן אשיב אשיב ממצולות ים מבשן אשיב מבין שיני אריה אשיב ממצולות ים אלו שטובעים בים. He says to them, yes. There is a pasuk in Tehillim that says אשיב ממצולות ים. Hashem will return back people from מצולות ים, which means from the depth of the sea. Yes, if you jump, you will have the world to come. כיוון ששמעו ילדות כך, so when the girls heard that if they will jump into that ocean and they will drown to death, they will die. They will have the world to come. What did they do? קפצו כולן ונפלו לתוך הים. So they immediately jumped into the sea. And when the boys saw it, they also jumped. Now, again, I'm not discussing the halachic outcome of this story and about when can you kill yourself in order to avoid sins. This is not a halachic class. I just wanted to use that example again to show the faith that women has. When they heard that if they will jump into the ocean, they will drown in order to avoid sins and abuse, they jumped. So what's the point? What's the message? The message is that if we go back to the first source, ותקרבנה בנות צלופחד בן חפר בן גלעד בן מחיר בן מנשה למשפחות מנשה בן יוסף, ואלה בנותיו, מחלה, נועה, חוגלה, מילכה ותרצה. When the Torah describes that they approach Moshe and Elazar, they didn't approach as just 5 women. They approached as representatives of all the women of Am Israel. The women who saved the Jewish people in Egypt. The women who never lost hope of Jewish continuity. The women who encourage and push their husbands not to lose hope in Egypt. And then not to do a golden calf and to think that this is your God, or Israel. Come on, the women had tremendous faith to lead the Jewish people into the land of Israel. And they came here in our Parsha to basically imbue that faith in all Am Israel. Later on we saw in 1096, and even before that, obviously, the expulsion of Am Israel from the land of Israel after the destruction of the Second Temple and after the terrible revolt of Bar Kokhba, really the terrible outcome of his revolt. We see again and again that the woman has tremendous power, insight, wisdom, sensitivity, sense of what is true and just. So the story of Bnot Tzelofchad is not a stand-alone story. It's the story of the Jewish women. It's the story of the women of Am Israel. It's the story of never lose hope, even at time of darkness. The women were always there. And the men perhaps sometimes need to just follow the women's advice and insight, as On ben Pelet did, and was saved. Am Israel has a place and has a position for everyone, men and women alike. And both can lead Am Israel, can lead the nation of Israel to the promised land. Thank you.